everybody! Welcome, you guys, to another Thrive Project interview. I'm super excited today. We have my amazing friend Sally with us. She has been such an amazing woman in my life, has been a mentor for me, and really, when I started this podcast, when I started the idea for this podcast, it was about 4 years ago after I graduated from college, and that's about the time that me and Sally really met and started getting together, going on walks, talking about life and direction, and figuring out really what's purposeful, what's meaningful. And so she's been a big part of this journey with me. So I'm really stoked to have her here today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit. Well, I'll introduce her a little bit, and then she'll tell us more. But she has been a teacher, a missionary, a caregiver, and just lived really a devoted life to the Lord, and is a follower of Jesus most of all. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of get into some more questions and things.
Right. I grew up in Pasadena and have a twin sister. And the special thing about my twin is that we both became Christians on the same day at the same moment. And so we're
cool.
twins twice.
Yes.
And we've been pretty much on the same page in many areas. And so it's been really she's been a constant encouragement to me to just keep walking the path,
yes.
you know, and finding my deepening relationship with the Lord. So I was in ninth grade when we became Christians, and at that time I was kind of looking at we had to do this career project, and I thought that I was going to be a missionary doctor, and God had different ideas.
Yes.
So it's been interesting to kind of see where my life has gone since then. You know, it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's really cool. So tell us a little bit about calling and what you think the word calling means to you.
Well, I used to think that it was my career, the path that I was to walk, and I think as I've gotten older and grown and have experienced a lot of life, it seems more that my calling in life is my relationship with Jesus, and that I'm called to follow him and walk in his footsteps, to listen to what he's telling me about himself and about the directions that he wants me to go, and paying attention to those signs. Some of it comes through his being in his word. Some of it just comes by what's around me and what I'm paying attention to. So it's what it's changed. I didn't think that it was going to be what it is, but it is just walking in his footsteps.
I love that, because it kind of, we were talking a little bit before this interview, and one thing we were talking about is just that perspective shift of, having this idea in your mind of what calling looks like, and maybe that it's this one thing, but then when you boil it down to, really my calling is to love God and love people and walk with him, and in that there's so much freedom, and there's so much diversity of what falls into that category, and then it gives us the joy of discovering that and seeing lots of different things as part of that calling.
Right. I thought, when I was in college, I kept throwing these flyers away for Urbana. And finally the last one came, and I thought, Sally, you haven't even prayed about this. And that was a very significant time where I did go to Urbana, and I was sitting I was sitting with a woman who said, pay attention, and I was sitting next to a pastor and a missionary, and she said, pay attention to what they're talking about. And later found out that this missionary, God had amazing things for me to learn from this missionary, Jack, and his wife, Marianne. And Jack was introduced as a person that was going to be teaching a class on missions, and it was more on the life of Jonah as a missionary, and it was fascinating. But he said, don't take my class if you're not willing to work. And I thought, oh boy, I like that. I took his class and met his folks, his mom and dad, and when Jack and Marianne went back down to work in Bogota, Colombia among university students, I would go visit his folks and just be in contact with them. And then God woke me up one night and he said, I want you to support them. And I remember sending them $16. And that was the beginning of a very significant relationship, friendship. And when I was 21, I went down to Colombia to be with them for a summer, 8 weeks, and I thought that my life was heading towards missions. And when I left that summer, Jack told me, he said, there are some things that you should, if you're thinking about missions, you need to aim for 5 areas. He said, get down typing skills. He said, get your career. He says, don't just come with a good heart, a big heart. Come with some skill to pass on. He said, get experience, learn the language, and then he said, and go to Bible school and get some Bible background. So when I was 21, that was my aim, was to accomplish those things so that I could eventually get overseas. And that was in the early 70s, mid 70s. And so I finished getting my teaching certificate. Okay. Started teaching in a small private secular school, and I had a terrible year. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but that summer before I started teaching that year, I went to Mexico and studied Spanish, thinking, okay, I can start working on my Spanish. In the meantime, I have a twin sister, so my twin went with the North American Indian Mission to Canada, and she raved about where she had been, and it was a small little island off of in British Columbia, off of Vancouver Island, called Alert Bay. And she said, Sally, you would love these people. And by the end of my teaching year, I was pretty much asked not to come back, or encouraged not to come back, because things were shifting in the school, and I thought, oh man, Sally, you can't teach. But on the other side, I thought, yay, I'm free. But I didn't know, because there were so many teachers, a glut of teachers, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I wound up going with the North American Indian Mission to Canada with my sister that second year for her, my first year. And because I didn't have a job, I asked the principal of the school if I could just learn more about teaching and be in this little school with half Native Americans and white children. And so she said, yes, just as long as I didn't proselytize. And I thought, I can do that. It's more about my life. Living my life with Christ in the center. So that's what I did. I did that for 2.5 years and got my feet back on the ground for teaching, because I knew that if I didn't stay in teaching, I probably wouldn't. If I didn't go back into teaching and get grounded again, that I probably would just leave it. And, so I just have to backtrack just a little bit. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was in my first couple of years in college, and I thought Nancy, my twin, had gone off to nursing school, and I thought, I'm not sure. And then I went to visit her, and I thought, well, maybe I should just give it a try. And the prerequisite was to take microbiology. I took 1 day. And I thought, that is not for me. That is, I am not into germs.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe I should be a teacher. Maybe I could go into teaching. But I wasn't really sure about that. But I started moving in that direction. And one time I was taking a ferry up to Alert Bay. And this guy who was a worker on the ferry, he said, well, why did you become a teacher? And I said, well, I didn't know what else to do. And he said, I thought so. And I thought to myself, never, ever answer that way again. It's not because I didn't know what to do, that was partly true. I was trying to figure it out. But I wanted it to be more purposeful than that. It was more like God was guiding me, but it was by default. And just taking steps forward. And so my 2.5 years up in Alert Bay were wonderful. I still have such a deep love for the Native Americans. They call them First Nations people. So and that was very important. While I was in Alert Bay, I began looking at Bible schools because I knew I wanted to got my teaching credential, got my years of experience. I wanted to head off to Bible school. And while I was there, Alert Bay was tough. It was not an easy place. And when I went to Bible school in England, I began to question a lot of things. And I was at one point just saying, Lord, I'm not sure I even want to follow you anymore. I was not sure at all. Tons of questions. And I would take these walks in the afternoon and just battle it out with the Lord, saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I don't know if I want to follow you anymore. Things seem really complicated. It's not so cut and dry. It's not so black and white. And we were studying Romans, and in my quiet time, God gave me a verse, and it helped me to take that leap of faith and say, this, you may not understand everything, you may not get all your answers, but you are to follow me. And so the verse is Romans 15:13, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing. And I have to read the rest of it.
Wow.
So may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And I think the thing that sticks with me most is that I have to take a step of faith, that I place my faith on Him, not about having answers. And God has kept bringing me back and over again to it's not about you, Sally. You have taken a step of faith. It's all about faith and having hope in Him. So Bible school opened up other opportunities for me. One was when I came back, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into teaching or head off into missions, where exactly. We were introduced to ministry among the Vietnamese, and I met a Vietnamese woman that we invited her to come to Bible school, and she gave her life to Christ. And I thought, Lord, what are you doing? And when I went back to the United States, I was, where do I work? Do I work among the Appalachian Mountains? Because I'd read Christy while I was in Alert Bay, and I thought, oh man, she's so much like what I feel like. And so I interviewed for working in the Appalachians, but I also, when I came back to California, investigated about working with Vietnamese refugees. And while I was talking with a professor who was working with refugees, he told me about William Carey International University.
Mm.
And I spent some time praying and fasting about, where do you want me, Lord?
Yeah.
And I believe that God answered my prayers by having me go to William Carey University, because it would keep me in teaching, but I didn't have to work with kids if I went into teaching TESOL, which is teaching English to speakers of other languages.
Yeah.
It would open up my doors for overseas. And I wouldn't have to work on so hard with disciplining kids.
Yeah.
It was hard for me, but anyway, so I wound up working on my master's for TESOL. And right in the midst of that, I was still aiming to go overseas, aiming for Latin America. And part of the surprises with God and walking with Him is that we can't fit Him in a box. And so so I was looking at missions for what I was going to do after I finished my master's and got my master's, and I was signing up for working with Overseas Missionary Fellowship, and they were going to, so I was accepted on the condition that I would go into therapy. And he said, one of the psychologists said, well, I think there's something there. I'm not really sure what it is, but it might have something to do with your twinship. And so I started therapy to take a look at what was going on, but I was also looking at my dating relationships and my family dynamics. And then while I was accepted, I began to feel very uneasy about going with Overseas Missionary Fellowship. I was accepted, but every time I got a letter from them, I just go, I'm not so sure. And it was like I was paying attention to that, because I began to see, okay, I was willing to take a step to say, yes, I will submit. But God had totally different plans for me. And then in June of '84, my brother died. He was a tragic death in Death Valley, and my whole relationship with God took a turn. And it wasn't that I doubted Him. I was screaming mad at God because why didn't you save him? Why didn't you stop that from happening? But God used that to let me just cling on to Him. And that even though I was really shaky in my relationship with Him, God held on to me. And He opened up the door for me to work. I went to China in '86, and while English language China, ELIC, welcomed me to come be a part of their team to replace a teacher. And so I went. I was in some ways like a zombie on the inside, because I was still hurting so deeply. My brother had died, then my dad died, and then I was going to China, and that opened up my opportunity to go. I was free to go, and I asked about it. But God used that significantly to create in me a joy for going overseas, and just like I thought that I'd be going one direction, and here I was being up in Alert Bay. Here I was going to China, and I thought, my goodness, the missionary life that I thought I was going to have is just changed a lot. And I went to China, and I had a chance after teaching to visit Tibet, and I remember telling the Lord, I said, Lord, if I could ever work in a place like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was in 86. In 94, I got this letter from a woman that I had done some teaching with at William Carey, saying that she was going to Mongolia.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that just went, whew!
Yeah.
It just jumped out at me, and I thought, oh my gosh, Mongolia.
Hmm.
And I thought it was going to be like China, but I was on a trip to Alaska with a friend. We drove up to Alaska and back.
Wow.
And so I have to tell the connection with this. I had, when I was in William Carey doing my thesis, my friend Kim came up to me. I didn't know her then. And she said, do you have a twin sister? And I said, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I do. And she said, did you go with the North American Indian Mission? And I said, yes, I did. And it was that opened up just a wonderful friendship with Kim, that we've done a lot of different trips together.
Yeah.
But we were taking this trip up to Alaska and back, and it was during that trip that I knew the following summer that I would be going to Mongolia.
Yeah.
And I was changing churches because I was unsettled in where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another thing that God does, is he makes you unsettled.
Yeah.
You know, and so he just does this stirring in our lives
Yes.
to propel us forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when that unsettling comes, you just go, okay, well, what do you have for me here, Lord?
Yes, totally.
So I went to Mongolia in 95 for my first year, and I loved it. And the person that directed the program, she asked me at the end of that summer, she said, would you be willing to be the director, not next summer, but the following 3 summers? And I thought, oh my gosh. But there was something inside me that was up for the challenge.
Yeah.
As well as I would love it. And it scared the living daylights out of me, and I realized, okay, this is a huge step.
Yeah.
The following year, I paid attention to all that she was doing, and then for the following 3 years, I was teaching full-time in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
I was working as a second grade teacher, and so I would go teach in Mongolia. No, I would go teach during the school year, and then go to Mongolia.
Wow.
And I was a team leader and then director, but then I would come back and teach my school year, and then go back and do Mongolia. And
that's cool.
it was life-giving for me.
Yeah.
And I did that for 8 years, and then in 2004, my whole intention is to invest my life in others, and so I invited 3 young girls that were college age to come with me, but they didn't quite get it. But I could tell.
Yeah.
They are pretty much into themselves, and I was kind of disappointed, but the Lord said, don't. You've given. I wanted you to give to those girls.
Yeah.
And they were exposed to an amazing opportunity. And my Mongolian friends gave and gave and gave to them, and it was okay. I had to kind of pull back and take a look at what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then God opened up opportunities for me to go to Africa with a longtime friend that, again, it's all about investing in others. When I was in the early 70s, I had met with this woman and another person who had just become a Christian. So Diane and Lisa, we met every morning, early in the morning, to be in a Bible study together. And Lisa was growing and loving her new relationship with the Lord, and Diane was growing, and so that was also that Bible study group, that small group, where we began to look at a contemplative life, and that was the beginning of my real contemplative life.
Yeah.
But later, Lisa knew that I had an interest in missions, and she and her husband were going to Ethiopia, and they asked if I would join their group, their mission group, and it was just another piece of, Lord, you just open up the doors to amazing mission opportunities. It's not what I expected, but it's taken a totally different turn. So that was in 2005, and then in 2008, 10, and 12, I went to, my friend Kim had invited me with people in her group, in her church, to go to Tanzania. So I did.
So fun.
And it was all because of teaching English as a second language, teaching English to speakers of other languages. And it was that ticket that has opened up opportunities for going overseas. And
so it's kind of been different than you originally expected.
Yeah, but it's been amazing.
Yeah, so cool. I love that. Oh, and one thing I love about you, you kind of touched on it, is that contemplative life that you've gone into, and I think that's one thing I so admire about you and have learned from you, is just to have that space with the Lord of listening and that quiet. And how has that helped direct you and guide you as you've sought the Lord's direction in different seasons?
When I went to this new church in 95, it was an Episcopal church in San Gabriel. There was a priest there that his heart was so beautiful and so connected with Jesus, and he introduced me to more of the contemplative life, and so he began different prayer groups, and so I met with a group for contemplative prayer weekly, and so that was kind of I was part of that group for probably about 15 years until I moved down here. I met regularly, but the group changed, but there was a core of us that would continue to meet, and then we had today's services, and I went to those. It was more of a contemplative, quiet space, and we had quiet days, and he led those quiet days, and then he left the church and went to a church in Arizona, and I missed him, but that was just a real grounding piece for contemplation. And then there was another priest that I'd known way back in earlier days in Pasadena, and she and her husband invited me to take a course on spiritual direction, and so I did. That was in 2008, and one of the requirements was to have a spiritual director, and so I started. But I was I had a friendship that was falling apart. That was it was a very dear friend that I had invested my life with, and that kind of it changed, and that was very, very painful for me, but that was God's doing. And so having a spiritual director for me at that point was a good thing, because she was just a listener. Whether I got as much direction, it was what I needed at the time. When I moved down here, I began to get thirsty again for another spiritual director, and I went on a pilgrimage to Italy, and that's when I really began to go, okay, I need to have another spiritual director. I need that in my life. And so I began seeking one and did an interview 3 times with different people that were recommended to me. And the third one, I go, oh my gosh, this is the person that I feel connection with. And so I've been meeting with her now I'm going into my 3rd year. And so this contemplative piece is really important to me because there are times where God has pulled me out to just do special days of quiet. And a year and a half ago, so the last thing that happened was I went on a quiet retreat a year ago. I think it was a year ago. And it was just wonderful to be quiet out in the desert in Vallermo. And I walked by this table and picked up a couple of chocolates. And the idea is to pay attention to all around you, but just listen.
Yeah.
So I picked up these 2 chocolates, and the Dove chocolates have these little sayings inside them. And so I picked them up on my pathway to pick up a chair and go out, sit out in the middle of a open space, out in the middle of a field, and wanted to meet God there. And so I opened up one chocolate and it said, "Ride with the top down." And I thought, oh my gosh, does that mean, Lord, you want me to have fun? And I thought, yes.
I love that.
And so that's listening to God.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So I wanted to pay attention to that.
Yes.
And the other thing was, this must have been 2 years ago, because the other chocolate said, do something new with an old friend. And so that retreat was in October, and in December, Kim said, Sally, would you like to do a pilgrimage to Iona, to an island where spiritual direction and quiet space and listening to God is really important?
Wow.
And yes.
Yeah.
So there was a group of us that went, and it was just a very, very special time.
That's so great.
So last December, we've had these Advent services at Little Church by the Sea, and those have been very, very powerful in my life. And in one of the services, the song was about I'm forgetting it, the Valley of Vision.
Oh yeah.
And I was asking God, Lord, give me a vision for my life.
Yeah.
It's not just about caregiving, because I taught. I have to back up a little bit. When I came back from China, I started. I was teaching English at 3 different places, and my life was crazy. It was crazy, and I was very busy going from one location to another. And I thought, I can't keep doing this. This is not good. And my therapist, he said, do that when you're retired. Get a job where you have benefits. And so I interviewed for a full-time teaching position in Pasadena, and I got it. And so that was what I started doing, and I did that for 25 years. And so I was teaching in Pasadena and then doing my summer things overseas.
Yeah.
But I taught 25 years, and then I retired, and God has always laid it on my heart to just pay attention to what's going on with Mom and to help her. And I have picked that up from overseas. People don't abandon their elderly.
Yeah.
And that has sat very deep in me.
Yes.
And so
I love that.
when I retired, I intentionally left teaching knowing that it was time to go. But I wanted to take care of Mom. And it's been 6 years of caregiving.
Yeah.
And Mom is up and down, up and down, up and down. Where was I going to go with that? The Valley of Vision. So in November when I met with my spiritual director, she said, I told her that it was just hard caregiving. And she said, you know, when you went into caregiving, you didn't know it was going to be this many years and this long and this intense.
Yeah.
She said, you may want to renegotiate. And that word, it was like you take those words and you just go, okay, listen to those words.
Yep.
Pay attention to those. So I told my twin, I said, Nancy, I'm sinking. I've got to renegotiate.
Yes.
And we weren't sure what that was going to look like, but Kim got an invitation. She was hiking with some missionary friends that I had gone to Tanzania with. And she said, Peter and Tammy with Wild Hope have invited us to come teach English to their workers and to help set up a library in Tanzania among the Maasai. And when I got that text from Kim, I just go, oh my gosh, Nancy! She was working with Mom, helping do some stuff, get Mom into a Hoyer lift and get her in a wheelchair. And she said, I said, Nancy, listen to this. And Nancy looks at me and she says, go. And I was like, okay. So I just don't go because Nancy said so. I go because, okay, I'm renegotiating my spiritual director. I wanted to get the okay from the spiritual director. I wanted to get it from others that know me well. From Nancy, my spiritual director, from others that know me well, from those that I see as leaders over me. So I asked Jeff from church, and they also, Jeff said, the question that you have to ask yourself is, why not?
Yeah.
And that was the final go ahead for me.
Yeah.
So it was more like listening to the Lord through the Word. Yeah. Listening to people that are important in your life.
Yes.
Paying attention to what they're saying. And so where I am right now is I'm weary. I'm tired. I've come back from giving those wonderful 2 months in Tanzania. They were wonderful, life-giving. And I flourish overseas. Everything inside me knows that. Yeah. And I've known that since I went to stay with Jack and Marianne in Colombia. I know that. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future. I don't know if it's going to... I don't know. Kim and I... She's just such a good traveling buddy and such a good friend. And we do well together. We complement each other and how we teach. And so I don't know if I'll go with Kim again to another teaching experience. We both kind of keep our ears open, and but I don't know what God has for me next. But I want to just keep my options open. And I know that I can't do anything. I will continue to take care of Mom. Yeah. I will take care of Mom, but I also need to take care of myself. So I'll take some breaks. And Nancy's coming home from being 2 months away, so she'll take over and help me take care of Mom.
That's awesome.
We know that Mom she keeps talking about saying goodbyes, so I don't know how much longer. She's so up and down, so I don't know what this will look like. Yeah. I know I've got more that I want to do.
You do.
I do.
Amazing life ahead. Oh, well, what a wonderful story. It's so great. And I feel like there's so many pieces of wisdom in there, just investing your life in others as you're doing with Mom.
That's exactly it. Yes. Investing your life. I think when I met you, Mo, I didn't know what it was going to look like, but when you shared, we were in that small little cabin group, and when you shared about some questions you had, I thought, oh, it's all about having the freedom to have those questions and to keep asking those good questions.
Yep.
And I felt like just spend time with Mo, and it's those kinds of things, pay attention to the people around you. God may call you to invest in those people.
Yeah.
And listen to what they're saying, and because what we pass on to others, they're the ones that are going to take the torch next.
Yes.
And so young people need to be listening to older people. Older people need to be, passing on gems for the future. And our world is changing. It's changing rapidly and dynamically.
Yes.
And it's important to keep our feet on the ground in terms of who we're listening to, and do the careful selection.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And that's why I invited you on, because you're one of those voices that's amazing to listen to, and so much wisdom. So thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you for being who you are in my life, and for sharing with this audience just all your wisdom. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.